Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however, emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Andrew Calderalla. Andrew was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1966 to parents fighting for the civil rights movement. His life is a combination of the Rocky story, Think and Grow Rich, and the Celestine prophecy on steroids. He has been through so many harrowing and intense situations that those stories alone could fill volumes. He has overcome dyslexia, other learning disabilities, and is also legally blind in one eye. Andrew was also bullied in school, however, changed that around and became a school leader and athlete. He has attained university degrees in speech and communications, religious studies, and Eastern philosophy. Andrew has lived overseas, traveled the world, is a martial artist, yogi, and what many call a health and fitness fanatic. He is a serial entrepreneur and has run a successful strategic consulting firm for over 20 years. Andrew is the creator of the Seventh Foundation and One Movement and best-selling author of The Way, 7 Revolutionary Steps to Living a Meaningful Life and Making a Real Difference in the World. He is an inspirational speaker, trainer, and coach who specializes in helping athletes, entertainers, entrepreneurs, executives, and other leaders to become their best in all areas of life while making a more significant positive impact on our world. He is helping some of our world leading movers and shakers and will influence many more in the years to come. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Andrew. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you, Dwight. Honored to be here. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Thank you for watching.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Andrew. So, Andrew, you had mentioned that you've listened to some of my podcasts, so you won't be, shocked by what I'm going to ask. Sometimes I get new listeners, so I'll just touch base as to why the origin story is so key to me. As growing up throughout my life, I always despised the fact of people, when you ask them about their lives, they always started from their success, move forward, and you didn't know enough about them and what happened to get them where they're at. And Marvel and the Star Wars sagas are a big driver for me too. They start in the middle, and then once they're successful, they worry and go backwards. Whereas I really wish I knew the origin ahead of time. It made the actual story that much more relevant. So for me, it's important to understand the origin story. So tell me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
Sure, absolutely. You touched on it when you read off my intro there. I was bullied as a kid. I had learning disabilities, or have dyslexia, other ones. And I was legally blind in one eye as a kid, which meant I had a lazy eye. So they put a patch over my good eye, which made me look out of my bad eye. And as you can imagine, having learning disabilities, a patch over your eye as a little kid, you were a huge target for bullies. So, and it wasn't just the kids in the school, it was also teachers and adults too. Just to give you one example, one teacher in I think it was about 4th grade, just was laying into me, ridiculing me in the class, telling me I'd never graduate, how stupid I was, how I should just drop out right now and get a job because I'd never graduate. As you can imagine, those kind of episodes, and I was almost drowned by a bunch of kids, just really tormented. So they scar you as a kid. I believe, though, that there was one event right after I was almost drowned and I was running through the forest trying to escape. And these kids cornered me where it was like I was losing it. I don't know, as a kid, where you're just screaming and just clawing it like you're an animal or whatever, and you're just trying to live. And it, as a 4 or 5 year old, when this is happening to you, I was just playing with frogs. And these kids come along and they start bullying you and then start trying to drown you or whatever. Luckily, I was able to escape. But there was this moment during that episode where, I don't know, it was like this. I've been close to God as a kid, and it was this moment where it was like something inside me maybe broke or realized something or woke up. I don't know how to describe it, but it was this light that was just, I separated myself at that moment from what was happening. I could see myself screaming and losing it, but at the same time, this inner self was just calm and peaceful and just going, you're going to make it through this, just run. You know what I mean? I just kept trying to run away and get to my house. And I think ever since that moment, I've always kind of had that centered self that I could go to and know that no matter what anybody's saying to me, that they're wrong. I'm not stupid. I'm not unworthy of life or whatever it may be that they're saying to me. And I just kept pushing forward. Obviously, if it wasn't for my mom, I had my mother, God bless her, was the one that, kind of always backed me up. I also had a special teacher in a learning disabled group that I was in that took extra time with me and showed me that while I was, dyslexic and had these other learning disabilities, I was also greatly gifted too. And that happens a lot. In my book, I cover that. There's a lot of past and current leaders of our society that have had all sorts of different types of learning disabilities. And they come with great gifts. So I was tested out as being, genius level and abstract thinking and these other areas. So, it's like I couldn't do math and I couldn't read or whatever. I couldn't even hit a ball because I couldn't see. I couldn't see in 3D. I could barely do anything, but I could understand and see patterns and things that other kids couldn't. So I think those experiences as a kid just stayed with me. It doesn't make it easy because as a kid, when you're scarred that deeply, as you go through the rest of your life, it's almost like when certain things happen, they call it triggers or whatever, you go all the way back down into those childhood feelings of uncontrol and, being unloved and unwanted, all the rest of the feelings. And to master those is tough. You know what I mean? You got to go through a lot. So in the book, I cover how to fix these things. I also did videos on how to overcome negative thinking, depression, and suicidal thoughts, as well as addiction. It's related to a lot of these childhood experiences. It was either I was going to figure this out or I wasn't going to make it, because while I had that inner light, you also, how do I say this? You also reflect your outside surroundings within your life. So if you're getting a lot of negative feedback, it's hard to be really positive, especially as a kid. So this allows you to, or this knowledge within those videos and in the book will help people to overcome these challenges. Obviously,
Okay.
there's a lot more there, but
Yeah, you're welcome to share more. Go right ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just was writing some notes down here.
No
and
worries.
I like
Well,
what
let me just
you.
say one thing then.
Sure.
To all the kids out there that are being bullied, I think one of the most important keys for them to know is that it has nothing to do with you. Okay, it's the bully's problem. The fact that we have not raised our children correctly to know how to overcome bullying. That's covered in the third book, and I'm going to be doing a video on that soon, on how we can end bullying in our society. But it's very important that these kids know that, their disability or whatever it may be that these kids are tormenting them about, that it has nothing to do with them, that these other kids have the problem. And I think it's also important to note that when you're solving bullying problems, obviously the bully has a problem. You need to correct the bully because they grow up and obviously cause a lot more problems in our society. Got to help the kid understand that, this isn't their fault and how they can overcome the stigmatism. But it's also all the kids that are watching this. Everybody wonders, like, why does some of these bullied kids go into the school and just shoot up everybody? Like, oh, why don't they just pick on the bully or whatever? It's because all the other kids did nothing. They sit there and they smirk or they laugh. Even your friends might laugh at you while the bully's, throwing you in the trash can or whatever it may be. So it just makes you feel isolated, you know. So I think as part of the solution to fixing these problems with bullying is to teach the masses of kids that are standing around how they together can stand up to the bully and actually stop them, not by fighting them, just by with their words and their unity and everything else. Because bullies are often, and this is one thing I learned, and just, you know, when you're bullied in school, it's always the big kids in your grade, obviously, but it's always the grade above you, you know, the grade 2 grades, 3 grades above you. But then when you get into the 6th grade, at least in America here, there's no more older kids. So I had like 2 or 3 fights in 6th grade. And after this last one, it was such a strange thing because this one kid was a really tough kid. Nobody was able to beat him up or whatever. He's picking on me and I just lost it. And I beat him up. And then the other bullies literally paraded me around the schoolyard like I was some hero, and they kind of became my friends. And there is this concept of what you call a bully beatdown. I've experienced this throughout my life. I've had a lot more fights than most people can imagine, but you beat up some people, they become your friend, and they also learn, because if you beat them up but also show them mercy, they feel what it is to be bullied, and then they also feel what it is to be not bullied, I guess, and then they kind of like you for some reason. It's a strange phenomenon. I've had that happen to me numerous times. But you learn that these bullies also have problems in their life, like their parents, you know, were bullying them, they were neglecting them, they were treating them badly, whatever. So they're taking it out on these other kids. So it's this whole chain of negativity that we need to overcome. So helping the bullies means helping their family figuring out what the problem is in their life. There's also a certain type of boy that we just become very hardcore, and it's very hard to teach us. And these kids need extra types of attention and training so that they can overcome the feeling of needing to bully people and maybe instead becoming protectors, so they can feel that same sense of power, but doing it in a positive way instead of a negative way. So I think in our society right now, one of the biggest problems we have, and I think all of the problems in all of our society kind of stem from the same situation, right? We're all born ignorant. We need our caregivers and our society to give us a good start. And if we don't have that, we're not going to reach our full potential and live this meaningful life that we all want. So one of the solutions I found is that for us to reach our full potential and live this meaningful life, we need to create this true society, a better world. But to create a better world, we need to become better people. So for us to become our best, we all need a clear path on how we can get on the same page in all these critical foundational areas of life, as well as a way that we can unite so that we can make these positive changes happen. And that's why, you know, the way will get us all on the same page on these foundational issues. And then the One Movement and Party that I started will help us implement these changes. And I just want to say that you know, I did write this book. Okay, this is 30 years of work. Like I said, I have a lot of spiritual experiences, a lot of epiphanies. I've studied all of our greatest thinkers and philosophies and theologies throughout history. And I found some amazing things that were so universal and so foundational that when I share them with people, it changes their life. And I believe it can change the world. And just to say this, you know, as a dyslexic learning disabled, 30 years to write a book. I'm not some writer guy that's out there to, you know, oh, I'm going to write all these books and make all this money. I almost found like that was the problem, that there's so many writers just want to write endless books to have you buy them instead of just giving you all the deep knowledge in one book or the shortest amount of time so that you can digest it and then live your life. So that's what I went out to do. This writing style, everything that's in this book, I've been told is totally unique and could really make a difference. So that's kind of why I'm here, is trying to explain all these different points.
That's amazing. I took down a lot of notes, and as we talked about prior to recording, we've got a lot in common. I went through a lot of bullying too. You know, you talked about having those special teacher that helped you, that supported you. I had that as well. I had severe health issues, as my listeners know. But yeah, you're so right though. Bullying isn't about you; it's about that person, and the group stands around and watches the bully, because sometimes, if, like you said, they're snickering or whatever, it's because of its uncomfortableness of why they're doing it. It's not even because they support the bully. but it fuels the bully,
It
unfortunately.
does. It does.
It fuels them by their reactions or lack of actions.
Exactly.
And I find that bullying, you're right, because one of the bullies I had was severe. It was so bad I had to, the school would move me when we hit junior high. We'd have an A, B, C, or a D class of grade 8, for an example, or grade 7. And because there were so many students, they made it so that I would never be in his class, and we'd never have overlapping joint classes either, because just stuff like that. So I can relate, or getting to leave things or go out to the bus sooner, you know what I mean? Whatever the case may be, to avoid this guy, because no matter what you do, my parents tried talking to his parents, and what it was their parents were the issue. So
Exactly.
if he got tattled on, then they'd take it out on him, and he'd come to school and take it out on me and other kids. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't a solution. So many people think bullying can be dealt with at the parent level by going to talk to them. You brought up a valid point. Usually that's the source of the problem. Maybe
Let me
it's
just
not even the
say this
parents.
real quick on that.
Sure.
I think there's 2 points there. There's parents that don't know. I've talked to people that just had no idea their kid was such a horrible person. And this is girls too. And it doesn't have to be physical bullying. It can be psychological, emotional bullying.
Yeah. Body shaming's huge.
Yeah, all sorts of just snickering and dismissing, just the dismissal of people. You know what I mean? Just cutting them off in line and treating them like they're nothing. But they're, like I said, there's 2 types of parents: the parents that don't know, and they can benefit if they're given the right tools to help their kid. The problem that I found is there's no real, like, here's the 7-step plan on how to fix your kid or deal with bullying, and then there's obviously caveats in there. But when I've studied this, I believe that there are ways to fix this. And then there, like you said, then there's the parents that are the problem. But again, if you talk to those parents, they had the same problem as kids with their parents. This is a generational bullying, negativity within families. So somebody has got to break the chain. And what I have found is that there's usually one of the parents knows that it's a problem, but they don't know how to fix it. Okay. They know that the other parent is more of the bully. Maybe it's the mom, maybe it's the father. But if you give them the right tools to talk to each other, most parents do not want to destroy their child's life, right? I mean, certainly there are some that are really messed up. I'm not saying there aren't. But these are the kind of things that we need to know as a society, as a school. Like, is this parent or these parents totally unreachable, don't care, and really egg on their kid to be a bully? Then that kid needs some really, really a lot of help. Don't you think? Like extra help in school to realize what's happening to him or her so that they can learn to overcome these things. I think as a society, we can't just give up on people. I get it that, this is your kid and you have the right and all these kind of things, but do you have the right to really abuse your child to the point where they're going to be destructive human being and be miserable for the rest of your life? I mean, most of the people that are bullies, when I talk to them, they're hateful, they're angry, they don't know, they can't control their emotions. You know what I mean? Even as adults, I deal with business owners like this. They're you go in the business, you're trying to fix the company, and you find out that all the employees are like, just hate these 2 business owners or the managers. You talk to the managers and you can tell why, because they're just mean people, and they treat their employees like they're subhuman or something, or machines. And we either are going to treat people equal, like we're all equal, and as we would want to be treated, or we're always going to have problems. That's like 2 of the laws within this book: equality and treating others as you want to be treated, which is the golden rule, which has shown up in pretty much every philosophy and theology throughout time, is so key. If we like, when I'm teaching how to raise your kids, one of the key facets is to repeatedly, every single time they make a mistake with another child or with somebody else, when they don't treat them well, is to say, would you want to be treated that way by them? Would you want that to happen to you? You know what I mean? To put this idea in their head so they can start thinking about, wow, I wouldn't want somebody to come and take my stuff away like that. I wouldn't want to be talked to that way. And if you can bring this mental ability into a child, you can see their behavior change. So you can see the problems with kids that don't think that way as they grow up, because it's all so selfish and me, instead of, wait, I have to think about this, So I believe that we can fix our society because, like I said, the problem and the solution are in the same place, that we're all born ignorant and dependent. But if we're have the right foundational knowledge and we're raised correctly, we overcome all of these problems. You know, one of the biggest insights I had in the book, it's like a million things just ran through my mind when I said that. Let me just stop and say one of them. One of the greatest insights is that we as human beings, the things that we value the most, that we want to become, are called virtues. Okay, and I know that sounds obvious, but if you understand that every success book, all of our faiths, everything else is really boils down to integrating virtue into your life and best practices. And let's just talk about virtues. Virtues are like, you know, being punctual and happy and disciplined and dedicated, having coping skills and all these other great facets, going the extra mile. But how do you build those into a kid? You know what I mean? If you're able to raise your child with virtue, this means you have to then help them develop their habits into best practices. So like you take a virtue of being punctual, you take real life best practices like setting reminders and leaving on time, being healthy. The virtue of being healthy requires you to have a good eating habit, exercise plan, sleeping, and all the rest. So it's like the idea of virtues and best practices. So the way is literally living rational, positive action, which is living because we're it all the time. This isn't something you do once in a while. This is who you are. It's living rational because what you've got to do is have logic and reason and an ability to customize this plan to fit your life, right? So it's living rational positive because, like I said, it's about integrating virtue. And then it's living rational positive action because it's about creating best practices in your life. So if we raise our kids correctly with the right virtues and best practices, their fundamental habits, the first thing they learn are these best ways of being. So then they don't have to relearn and redo things later. So they're eating right, they're disciplined, they're dedicated, they're doing all the things they need to do to build up these skills. This has to do with the daily way, which is covered in here. And you teach these things to your kids, so we eliminate most of the problems in our society because now we're raising our kids correctly. Now, for all of us that are older and like, you know, I don't know about you, but I found it really upsetting in my 30s and 40s when I'm, you know, delving through all these books and, you know, researching all the philosophers and theologians, and you finding, oh, wow, this is key to life. I'm like, wow, I'm 35. I wish I knew this when I was 17, or why wasn't I just raised knowing these things? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of upsetting. I mean, just the idea is how to care for your body. We say, be healthy. And it seems like when you go out in the universe and you're like, okay, I want to be healthy. And you look out there, there's so many different ideas of health and how your body works and all the different diets. Eat nothing but meat. No, don't eat any vegetables. No, don't eat, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. So I had to start from square one and learn how our bodies work and all these different ways on how we can be our best and when you need your food and all this. Like I said, it's just crazy. I don't know why it wasn't already done. You know, so the idea of living rational positive action, integrating virtue and best practices into your life, like I said, that seems to me is kind of the foundation of life right there. It's like you want to become the best person you can be, then you're trying to integrate virtues into your life, and you do that through best practices. That's not me telling you this, just what it is. You know what I mean? So if that is the way, then the question is, how do we do it, right? So that's where the 7 steps come in. So you follow these 7 steps and you build a better day for yourself. You learn how to communicate better. I mean, there's so many things I can't even go through. I couldn't list them all out in a list, but all the different basic foundational aspects of your life, if you can get those in order, then you can build on top of that. And that's how you can become a better person. It's usually like, for me, it's like if you go from the center and you work your way out is how you can be find a lot of the answers and become a better person. If you're dealing with all the fringe issues and you're not dealing with your core and your center, it's going to take a lot longer if you ever get there.
Well, if you don't learn to, you know, I'm going to interject here because, you know, bottom line, we have to learn to love ourselves, and it has to start with us internally. We've had so many issues in our society. And when you talked about bullies, and I never had a chance to finish what I was going to mention about the parents, what I was going to also say is, in my experience, it isn't always the parents. Sometimes it's a sibling. And I've done counseling with my own finance clients. I do a lot of lifestyle counseling work. So, because if I can't help them with their 6 inches, I can't even help them with their finances because it slows down their whole lives. Our 6 inches, our heart, body, and our mind and soul, if they don't all tie together, and you talked a little bit about nutrition, but I'll bring that up in a bit. And I found there was a sibling that was causing a lot of problems and was bullying the younger child, because guess what? That sibling was getting bullied at school. They might have been in a different school. They were being bullied and they brought it home, and the parents were oblivious to it, right? Because sometimes because they just, they were the type of person, be seen, not heard, or I've heard it all, how kids have been raised, or they're raised by the television, or they're raised, you know what I mean? They were so entitled, the parents, that they were so entitled in their own lives that they forgot to watch their kids grow up. And a sibling was causing all the problems that directed right to, and I've seen that happen as I was growing up. I'm talking by it from example. So you're right, it isn't always the parents. The biggest thing I see, though, from way back when I was in elementary school back in the 70s to my own children going through elementary school, and now my grandkids going through elementary school, the school system is broken. They have policies and procedures in place for bullying. They talk about it. They have the handbook. They have this, they have that.
No,
but they don't follow. They don't follow it, their own rules.
Yeah.
They'll have a
they
rule
don't even
for
work
bullying.
half the time.
They don't follow their own rules. So they'll say that somebody's automatically suspended for touching a child, but yet it hasn't happened. Even with my grandson, he just recently here last year had some challenges, and I went to the school because my daughter didn't know how to deal with it. And I sat with the principal and I utilized some of the things that I've learned. And then she had that, I could see that epiphany light bulb moment. And she realized they were being hypocritical by saying, this is how we do things, yet they didn't do it. So what message are they sending to the child? So the child eventually, that it's okay. And the child eventually stops complaining. The parents feel helpless because the administration or the teacher that's dealing with it along with administration don't have any backbone. They're not doing what they should do to protect a child. And that becomes ingrained as learned behavior. And it becomes worse and worse as they get older. And like you said, it affects them when they're in their jobs. You get a manager or an owner or owners that are bullies because they had that in their childhood. They were that way. Or you know what, in some cases, it's been the person that was bullied that became the bully in their own, because they felt so helpless that when they get into a power position of having power, that's how they figure they get respect, is by projecting what they went through. So, this is such an interesting conversation. We could talk about this all day.
Well, let me just follow up on that 1 second.
Sure. Go ahead.
The plan on how we deal with bullies, I don't necessarily agree with just right off just kicking the bully out, because they need help. And I think part of the help is they need to be feel humbled, right? I don't know, like I said, I've been in so many fights, so many bullies, and if you are able to just take them down. I've been a bouncer in college, in clubs and whatnot, and I don't know why, I'm just one of those guys that can be sitting in a bar with my back to everybody and some guy will come up and want to fight me. It's just, I literally was walking in a plant store trying to buy a flower for my mom, and I got like some guy attacked me. So very strange, my life. But the point is, I think that the biggest problem in our schools is that we kind of have all these actions in the background. This all needs to be brought out right in front of the kids. I mean, like if this kid was bullied in front of, let's say at lunchtime, in front of all the kids in the lunchroom, the next day, that bully should be brought out in front of the lunchroom and everybody stopped and listened, point out to this bully, what he did yesterday was wrong and what you people didn't do, whatever. You bring it out and you make him apologize right to that kid that he bullied. And if they won't do it, then maybe at that point you could, if they won't take those steps and be and make amends and say you're sorry and face the whole world looking at you as being wrong, you know what I mean? Then maybe you expel them. But without these steps, you're never going to fix these problems. And that's where I said, like in my third book, and I don't have all the steps here in front of me to list out for you, but that one is so key, because these bullies, if you just expel them, they've learned nothing. They don't care. I mean, what kid loves school so much that they're going to be upset now that they can't go? Very few, especially the bullies. They don't want to be there to begin with. So now they're home playing video games. It's like, wow, I just got rewarded for beating up that kid. That's nothing. If they had to go to school and, be labeled as a bully and say this is wrong in front of the whole class and, made feel bad and all the rest and all those feelings that they have to go through because it's almost like you're reversing it on them. right? Now they have to apologize. They have to realize what they did was wrong. They have to face the consequences. This is how you fix things. So anyway.
Well, I agree with you. If I give you that impression that I
No,
didn't,
you
I
didn't.
agree
I
with,
just get a
I
little
agree with,
upset sometimes.
yeah, I get it. You know what? That's passion. It's not necessarily upset. It's how we label and word things too. You're passionate about it because of your experiences.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Expulsion does nothing. But what my point was is the schools have rules they don't follow,
sure.
right? They don't have, and their processes are not even correct. Even if they did follow them, you just
Right.
brought up a valid point. They don't, their processes are broken, but even the processes they have, they don't implement.
Right.
And I agree, calling a kid out like that would be extremely powerful, because now if the event happens again and they still don't learn it, right? I'd give them another chance. But then eventually something has to happen where the community of the school is protected
Right.
from not just the toxicity of that kid bullying or beating up one kid repeatedly like you or I. It's the whole community is affected by that negativity of that kid, right?
Well,
And
that's where I
sometimes,
think
right?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say, that's where all the kids in the school, right? If they're taught how to deal with bullies, like where they all, get really close to each other and they start calling them out, just they can even have a chant. Bully, stop now, bully, stop now, bully, stop, whatever it may be, where the group feels powerful. There's in masses in a mob, a bully's not going to stand up to 50 kids. You know what I mean? They're cowards at heart. The only reason they're doing what they're doing to these kids that are helpless, I've seen people picking on kids in wheelchairs, for God's sake, throwing them out of their wheelchair and laughing at them, flopping on the ground. I mean, how sick is that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
exactly. There's something seriously wrong with these kids. So if the kids around them that know all of this stuff is wrong, know how they can group together and help to prevent these kids from doing what they're doing, and at least call them out and let the bullies be like, whoa, I got to get out of here. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's what you want. So it can't just be top down, teacher, parent. It's got to be all of the kids being taught literally, like in a class, like, okay, when this is happening, here's what you kids do, right? You all stand up, you cut together, and you start chanting. All the big boys or whatever, the boys that you've converted to be more protectors, let them all stand in front if that's the case. Like I said, you can show kids how they can confront their classmates and whatnot when they're doing things wrong in a very positive, productive way, so that the kid can be called to the carpet and learn. And again, this empowering of the children to stop the bullies, as well as the adults to come in and then do the thing I said with, like, in the lunchroom and all the rest of it, all of it together, it's what's going to help change this kid. Because even if they go home, when they're in school for 6-8 hours and they're dealing with this type of scenario, even if they're a bully, it's going to change them. You know what I'm saying? So what you're trying to do by creating these type of scenarios is to create an environment which this kid is in every day, where they can't be the bully anymore. Then when they go home, right, there's this play back and forth. Now the parents are doing this to them, then they go to school and they can't act out. That's where these kids, once they're identified, might need a counselor. They might need some extra help so they can figure out what's going in their own mind.
Or social services to intervene in their home life, because
Exactly.
sometimes it is so bad. And that's another thing, the schools have shirked their responsibility for that. Right?
Absolutely.
They're taught certain things, but they're not taught well enough. And I get it. Teachers, because I do have people that listen that are teachers. We're not picking on you. We're not picking on the principals, the vice principal. We're not picking on you. We're saying we're here to help support you. If you're willing and sick and tired of this, there's avenues for you to go to make your community of your school one bite at a time, just the same way we eat an elephant. You got to do it one step at a time. There's people like Andrew and myself that are here that will give you tools or work through the tools to help, you implement it so that kids feel safe. They should feel safe as when they're at home. And if their home life isn't safe, you should be reporting that child. You're not protecting that child by saying, oh, if I get social services involved, it'll harm the other kids in the family. Because guess what? If one's getting bullied by the parents, all of them are in different ways. One might get physical, one might get mental, another one might get both. I've seen and heard it all. And, and those parents need to have help. Like you said, the parents need counseling, and they need help as well as the kid, right? It's a full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a greater picture too is when we look at kids and all this kind of thing, where a lot of these parents, and some of them come from broken families. They come from maybe they didn't finish school or whatever it may be. So for me, a lot of times we're looking at like, how do you create a better society? It all starts obviously with our kids. And this idea that education and food and all the rest of the child's needs are determined by how much money the parents have is got to stop. Because
Oh, really? I agree.
because
100%.
here's the case is, if you're going to create a better society, you need to have these kids grow up and be the best they can be. They're not going to be that way if they don't have the proper nutrition, the proper education, the proper emotional upbringing, and all the rest. So for us as a society, if we're like, well, to create a better society, it can't just be about money. It's because there's too many people that don't have enough money to give their kids all these things, or they're just born up into a place that's horrible, right? That just doesn't have a great school. And they don't have any restaurants or supermarkets around them that sell any healthy food. They don't have enough money to buy it, even if they did. So, we as a society have to change our thinking to where not everything should be money based, because we'll get so much more back by helping that child become a better person as they grow up and take their place in society. Then it'll cost us more money later if that kid's a bully, he's not educated properly, and all the rest. Because a lot of times they'll fall into
Our
crime.
healthcare system suffers because of
Everything.
lack of everything, of being
Health.
involved in proper nutrition, mental health, all of it. Our healthcare systems are suffering tremendously. And you look about, let's dial it back a little bit. You talked about the manager or the owner or whatever, that's a bully, and he's doing that. And those people feel helpless to say anything because they don't want to lose their job. They have mortgage, they have all these expenses. So they let that person bully them because of financial reasons. And that person causes them mental strife. Now, maybe they have to take sick leave, or they have to go see a psychologist or psychiatrist and pay it out of their pocket. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It causes financial strife. I've seen it in my clients. It causes health issues. They're sickly all the time. Not just the kids are, the parents are, and then it transmits to the kids see mom and dad, sickly, not feeling well. They're getting bullied at school. They don't want to add more pressure onto mom or dad or both. So they don't say anything. So they internalize it. Meanwhile, that kid's always sick because of it. The parents are always sick. It's a cycle that needs to be broken. It has to stop. And people say you can never make a difference. That is such a lie. Listeners, you can make a difference one person at a time. If you can save one family, and I do, I've been working on this. I talk to my clients, and vulnerability on my side, you probably agree, it's so important to connect with people when you're trying to educate and teach them. Storytelling, absolutely truthful stories with sincerity. Sherry, this is what I've found, and this is what I've gone through, and learning how to present it through proper tonality and body language, and just working through things. And don't expect people to learn it the first time. When you're sitting and talking to somebody about your experiences as being bullied, or who they can go and get help from, or whatever the case may be, realize that might be the first time anybody's ever talked to them about it, and it's overwhelming. 5 to 10% of what you're going to say to them is going to sink in. Set up a follow-up call. Check in on them. Even if you don't have a follow-up call, just say, hey, that was a great conversation. You got time tomorrow? Let's jump on a phone call, a video call. Let's go for a coffee, whatever. I want to continue to, delve into this conversation and help you through your challenges that you're having in your family with bullying. And you know what?
Absolutely.
I don't have all the answers, Mr. and Mrs. or Mrs. or Mr., but I have a friend named Andrew. He's got all the answers. How about we connect Andrew into this equation, and Andrew can help you. And, I can facilitate it because you don't know Andrew, you know me. But eventually you'll get comfortable enough with Andrew. And you know what I mean? It's not always what you know, it's who you know and what they know that counts, right?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that's our biggest strength as humanity, is that, it's like individually, any one of us know all of it, but together, collectively, we might be able to figure it all out, And I think, honestly, that's where my research led me through all these different philosophers and theologians and everything else. One of the other great epiphanies I had, I have so many of them in this book, but I was deep into Freud and Jung. And if you've ever studied psychology, you know that like the big fight is between like the mentalists. You change your mind, you change the way you think, you're going to change who you are. Then there's the physical, you change the way you act and what you do, you're going to change who you are. What I found is you got to put them both together in the right way to make it happen, because certainly you need to change some of the things that you do. If they're not good habits, you make good habits, and then you need to change the way you think. But when I was deep into Freud and Jung, I have the great books of the Western world. I don't know if people know what those are, but they're done by Britannica Encyclopedia. My dad gave them to me when I was really young, and they have all the different philosophers, Western philosophers. I wish they had an Eastern one, but all the Western philosophers. And what's cool about it is in the very first couple books, like they have this one where it's the Great Conversation, and then there's other books where you can literally like look up the word, the idea of love, and you can see every great philosopher throughout all of our history, it tells you what page to go to read about all their thoughts about these topics. So I was so deep into trying to figure out, like, and again, if you've ever read these old writers, they say sometimes it seems to me there's three things going on. One, they're always trying to up their peers in some obtuse writing way to make their peers seem stupid, or they have to placate the king or the pope or somebody, so they always qualify what they say. But what got me was it took so long to get here. Literally, I was probably in my 40s when I was like, everybody's talking about your core belief system. If your core belief system is what determines everything about you, what you believe, what you think, your attitude, what you're going to say, everything else. So if you have the right core belief system, then you can kind of master your life. It'll guide you throughout your life. It acts as a compass and everything else in every event. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, wow, this is what they're talking about, because they keep talking about different people's beliefs and how they're destroying their mental, equilibrium and all these kind of things. And it's like, once you understood that, and they're like, okay, so what are the core beliefs that we need to have that cover all of life, that are going to give us this positive way of being? And that's where one of the, like I said, the greatest epiphanies I had, that's in this book. After a big spiritual experience I had when I was young, I was probably 19, I was given these 10 laws. And I didn't realize it at the time, but these 10 laws are what make up a core belief system that covers all of life. And just the first two, the laws of purpose, are the primary purpose of life is for you to become your true self, live your true life, and go to heaven. The primary purpose of society is to create the true society, our true society. This idea of you becoming your best, living your best life, creating a better world, and ultimately going to heaven is like the point of everything you've ever read. Okay, health, all success books, all faith, you name it, is all boiled down into that. It's about creating better people ourselves, creating a better society, and ultimately going to heaven, right? If you don't believe in heaven, you can just leave that out. It's no problem there. But once you understand that, that means like every success book you've ever looked at, every self-help book, if you just open it up, like Think and Grow Rich. People could compare my book to Think and Grow Rich. That guy spent, just so people know, that guy spent 30 years trying to figure out what the wealthiest people in the world thought were the most valuable things that made them successful. And if you read Think and Grow Rich, literally the topics of every paragraph or every chapter are basically a virtue, right? So going an extra mile, discipline, whatever it may be. So when we have a core belief system that covers all of life, then it will allow you to navigate your life more effectively. So the difference between my book and that is that I found what are like the core of what makes us as a society better and as individual people better. Like, what are these core beliefs? And those two are the first two, right? These purpose, the laws of purpose, and then the universal laws. All people are equal. Treat people as you would want to be treated, and to respect life. Respecting life just has to do with how we care for our world. It obviously creates our food and cleans our water and air and everything else, so we need to respect it and care for it properly. We need to see each other as equals. And when I say equals, science and religion agree on this point, okay? For science, 99.9% of our DNA is the same for all of humanity. For the faithful, we know that God created everybody and everything. So science and religion agree that we're one human family. We don't have a race problem because we're one human race. We have problems with prejudice, discrimination, people being brought up learning hatred and all these other harmful practices. We have serious problems with legacy systems that are coming out of slavery and serfdom and oppression and destruction of our world. And we need to fix all of these things. So when we look at individual people, and we're talking about bullies a lot, I would start from the point of pity. If you can't feel sorry for somebody that's being raised so horribly that they become a bully, whatever reason, or this idea, the sickness of superiority in society. It doesn't matter where people talk white supremacy, you can talk Asian supremacy, you could talk black supremacy, whatever. There's supremacy, this idea, the sickness of superiority has infected all of humanity throughout time. We've had wars over
whole countries.
Whole countries, like I said. I mean, World War II is the perfect example, right? Rise in the East and the rest. We have the right to rule over everybody and just and treat you like animals because you're not us, right? That sickness has got to end. It's in our faith.
Religions.
Exactly.
Whole religions that say that if the end of the world comes, they're the only ones that are going to survive. How
well, let me just say this. I know in some religions
conceited
actually,
that is.
Yeah. Well, not only is it conceited, you miss the whole point of why you're here. It's like we are not perfect. This idea of original sin or being flawed, let's talk about this for a second. In a lot of religions, you go back to the Garden of Eden, we took knowledge, right? And that was wrong. And if you look at it though, they made a mistake there. It wasn't wrong. Because if we can make a choice that we have free will, then we are not puppets. If you believe in God, the whole idea of us being made in the image of God and all of this doesn't mean we have all the knowledge of God or we even look like God, because God is, non-formage like we are. But the whole point is that we can learn and fill ourselves with knowledge and abilities that can bring us to higher states of being, right? So if we raise ourselves correctly and our society develops correctly, we can create better and better people as we go forward. Like you made that point earlier that, you can't really change anything. If you just look at human history, for God's sake, we have changed so much. I mean, I've studied all of history, and it seems to me like the same thing happens over and over and over. It's like we as a society, go along, and then some leader takes control and they keep doing more of a bad job. They keep oppressing us, and then we overthrow them, right? There's some type of revolt. And I mean, you can just look at all the revolutions throughout history, and it's always like, for some reason, there's like two types of leaders, okay, in our society. There's those of virtue and are trying to help us, but then there's this other leader where for some reason their whole goal is to put their thumb over people. Everything's a competition. It's win-lose. It's zero sum. You know what I mean? The only way I can win is for you to lose. And that is what has caused most of the problems throughout history. We are not here to compete so hard against each other. It's like, how do I say it? It's like a sporting event, right? I don't know if you've been an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. It's not like you go to I've been also in martial arts. It's like you go to the event and you want to hurt that person. You know what I mean? You don't want to like make them sick before the event so they can't compete. You want to win because you were better and they were at their top form and you were able to win. And that's how good athletes feel. But there's other people that would rather cheat, and win at all costs. Like, oh, I got that guy sick before the event and then I was able to beat him. And they think they're still winning when they're not. This idea in our society of what our goal is got to be based in cooperation first, because like I said, we as a human race should want everybody to have a wonderful life. If you're a good person, that's what you want. You don't want like the Russian state to fail. If you're so full of hate for people around the world, certainly you want the Russian state or the Chinese state or whatever it be to become a better place to live and have a better society. But to wish people to fail, all you're going to do is create horror in the world, right?
Well, it's a waste of energy too. It also eats you internally when you think that way. When you wish ill on others. I want to interject though. You talked about core belief system. I think one of the biggest things that our society lacks in is teaching people core belief. I call it a core value system, right? Yeah, so absolutely. Having core values on a personal level, having core values in our work, right? Core values for our businesses, core values with everything we do. And we think to ourselves, and for the listeners, because I've talked about this before, core values are so integral in the fact that every decision you make, you measure it. It's a measuring stick against your core values. And if it violates any of those core values, you shouldn't be doing it. Or you should be reevaluating how you're going to do something if it does violate your core values. Some people have core values 2, 3, some people have 8, 10. And for those of you that are listening, if you have a core value system up on your wall, that means nothing if you're not applying it, right? Action speaks
Let me just
louder
say
than
this
words.
too. I want to interject. I know
Sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think what I found is that the problem is that most people don't know what their core values are. If they have them, they're not complete. They don't cover all of life. And the 10 laws that are in the book, they're in step 4, the way. Step 4 is center. So it's about centering yourself in these core values. You can have other values, but all values are virtue. Okay, just get that in your head. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're like, oh, I want a better family life. It's like, well, having a better family life means you communicate better. You know how to raise your kids. You have all these good practices, best practices that you've integrated. So the whole idea of understanding your core values is to realize that humanity, we need to share some core values if we're going to make it. Your core values can't be on a fundamental level so different than mine that we can't create a better world. And that's what I'm saying. If we could just, as a human race, just get on the same page when it comes down to some of these basic foundational issues of life. It doesn't mean that there aren't other values. I want to integrate all virtue, all values into all of our systems. You know what I mean? I think one of the greatest problems we have is that we're selecting values over others. Like, no, you can't just choose, like the border wall. I have this discussion with people all the time. In America, we're all like, oh, southern border. If you talk to the right wing, right, they're all about law and order, justice, spending our money for the people that it's dedicated to, all these points. It's like, well, each one of those is virtues. And then you go to the left and you're like, they want humanity, treating people with respect. You know what I mean? So you can't separate those. You can't say we want law and order without humanity's, virtue and respect and treating people as equals and everything else, because then you can create a system that is out of balance. So what I found is that it's you as a human being, like you said, if you're caught up in hate and wanting the other side to fail and you're all negative, you're missing the point. You're never going to get there. We're never going to fix this world through violence, because if you do violence to others, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it may be, they're not going to be wanting to be your friend and listen to you, right? But if you're doing violence, you're not doing good, right? So like, even if we go to war and the good people win, we've all lost, right? Because we had to go to war. The only way good people win is if we don't have to go to war, right? Because if we are good people and we go to war, that means I'm killing people. I've watched my friends die. Now I have PTSD. I've spent 5 years at war instead of raising my kids and doing all this other good stuff, right?
What about patriotism? That's another word that's thrown around a lot. Oh, you're not patriotic enough. And people use patriotism as a shield to shelter the fact of their wrong sayings, their wrong actions, their wrong everything.
It's like religion,
that seems,
too.
Pardon me?
Religion is the same thing.
Well, of course.
Like Catholic, if you're a Christian or you're a patriot, it allows you to rationalize doing things that you wouldn't necessarily do because somebody gave you, some authority figure said it was okay. We see this throughout all of human history. Just look at the Catholic Church. I don't know about you, but knowing who Jesus Christ was, if this guy's worried about food and rich and poor issues and health issues and all these things, how the church became a place of let's go down to Christ's homeland and kill, rape, and take over the land that he lived in. It just seems like it's so obscene, right? It's like the Prince of Peace wants you to go down to his homeland and kill and rape everybody. What are you talking about? Yet this was or torture your own people, like in the Inquisition. This idea that anything is okay if it's written in the Bible or if some leader of some faith says it is not right. This is actually covered in the book. God did not put us here because anything here is perfect. That's part of our challenge, right? We're the order makers out of chaos. We need to fix the wrongness. And to fix the wrongness, we need to know what the wrongness is. You cannot deny that we have this flaw as human beings, right? The Pope is not without flaw, okay? That was just some guy saying that so they can have ultimate power over people. The whole idea of patriotism or your faith is not to subvert your values and to become this hateful, self-righteous human. It's to realize that there are problems within your faith, there are problems within your country, and to fix them. That's the true patriot. That's the true faith person, is the one that sees that, no, leader, I'm sorry, but you're talking about hating everybody. Christ is about love. You know what I mean? You're only going to fix this world if we love each other. I know that sounds to some people like, oh, it's just, some weak guy, whatever. Let me just say,
well, that person isn't going to be part of our tribe anyway. So
no, but we need to help those people.
Of course, I'm not saying we don't. I'm saying they're not going to get the message because they're going to have shut themselves off to listening to you anyway. It doesn't mean we give up on. It doesn't mean we give up on them. It means that the approach that we're utilizing doesn't always work for everybody. It can work for one person and it gets past their 6 inches, and the next person, they just put up a bigger barrier.
Well, they just need another way to get to that person.
That's what I mean.
Like I've talked to like KKK members, people that were some of the most horrible people that you would think in your life, but some of these people have been reformed. So they're the KKK member that then, awakens and then goes to his fellow KKK members and shows them that they're wrong, is sometimes so much more powerful than somebody like you or me, right? That's never been that going there. So
it takes one person though. And I have a story for you, if you don't mind me adding. I'm Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic. And I understand what you were bringing up in regards to the Catholic faith. And one of the things I talk about as a guest, and I've talked about with many people, and I coach about it, is life doesn't mean, just because the past of where the Catholic faith or Christianity or whatever you want to call it, doesn't mean that we can't continually change. I educate people to treat their faith instead of running, because I have friends, God rest his soul, one of my closest friends passed away from cancer a few years ago. In the period of time we were friends, let's say it was about 20 years, he jumped from church to church to church to church, because every time he didn't like something, instead of accepting it or leaving it behind and accepting the good of where he was at, he would go to another church and then another church. And he'd say to me, oh, you should come to this. It's so awesome. Then months later, years later, oh, he's changing. He's at a different church. And I tell him this, and my listeners are quite aware of this, and any new listeners and you, I treat my faith like a smorgasbord. And people will say, what do you mean? When you go to a buffet, you try things. Well, absolutely. Do you like everything? No. Do you like some things? Yes. Do you go back for seconds of the things you like? Yeah. Do you talk about the things you like to other people? Yeah. Do you tell people, I didn't like this, so, and you tell them why? Yeah. Well, guess what? I don't believe everything about the Catholic faith, right? And I get people that I've got critics and hate and don't really care. That's how I've stayed within my faith. I don't need to jump to another church, because it's all about God. It's about Jesus. He died on the cross for us, for our sins. We are fallible. We're not infallible. We are, in the likeness and image of Christ, not like you said, God wasn't in corporeal form. God was, right. And he's a God. So bottom line, I treat faith one step at a time. If I don't like something, I have even faith. You can go to my church and there's cliques, just like in high school or whatever. Sure. We have groups of people that are devout Bible thumping Catholics that if I told them how I believe, or some of them do, they don't come, they're not part of my tribe, part of the larger tribe of the church. They're not part of my local little group tribe. When I go to church and have all the older people that like me and the younger people, and I like them, and we all congregate before Mass or after Mass, or we're at church functions. And I honestly believe you don't have to be a Kool-Aid drinking person and believe everything that goes on. You need to have critical thought processes and realize that everything that is taught by a human being the priest or being the Pope is right. You need to think to yourself, and it's back to, I guess, that core value system we talk about, our core beliefs, right? Virtues, right? You
can't give those up.
You can't give that up.
I say that in the book. It's like, if your faith is making you kind of go against virtue, you have to realize that there's probably a flaw there. There's probably something that is from the past, handed down, that just, is kind of an old way of thinking. And there's
there's flaws in all of it, though. That's Absolutely. What I'm being. So my friend, God rest his soul, that went from church to church to church. Why? Here's a story for you. When I was growing up in my hometown, I grew up like I'm in a city of 1.2 million people, but I grew up in a small farming community, 10,000 people. And when I started growing up, there was one Lutheran church. By the time I left and moved away at 18, there was 5 Lutheran churches. Why? And a population of 10,000. Well, now they're about 15,000. Why do you need 5 Lutheran churches? People didn't like this, so they went and started up their own. They didn't like this, they went and started up their own. Now there's 5 of them. What community of even 15,000 people needs 5 Lutheran churches? Because they're broken inside. They don't get it. They don't, not any organized religion or faith is going to have every single virtue or thing that you like. Hopefully there's more of enough things that you can eat at the buffet to satiate yourself, right? Which I've been blessed to have that. And you're going to leave the stuff that you don't like, and you're going to have cliques within your own faith that believe the same value system as you and have the same virtues, and you're going to connect with them. You can still all go to church, the same church, but you're not all going to eat the same thing at the buffet.
Well,
right? Hopefully
uh,
there's enough value there that you're feeling satiated, and your faith and your heart and your condition of being a human to everybody else is always enhanced, and you're leaving better than you went. And you're right. If you're going to anything and it's making you feel terrible, you're the wrong place, right? Then you should leave.
I agree with that. I think that there's also, I've studied all of our different faiths. And I think that the problem of this fracturing and fracturing, a lot of times is part of the problem, because a lot of times what happens in those fractures or that segment is that they highlight some idea in the faith and they push down other ideas. And that's where we get some of these extremist groups that are literally out to kill people because they're taking the idea of jihad or in the Christian faith, whatever, turn the other cheek, or an eye for an eye, whatever it may be, and they're making that the forefront of the religion. The idea of virtue and the 10 laws that are in here are at the core of Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, you name it. And that's the point, is that what I found is that humanity, we're not as divided as we think we are. The God that I know and I speak to is the God of all of this, creator of all the religions. We as humans, we have to separate this. God is the entity, right? As an entity. The creations on earth are these organizations that humans created. The books are books written by human beings. So for me, it was like, I've always been connected to God when I was a kid. I don't know if it was being bullied or I was also very spiritual. I've had a lot of spiritual experiences and very intense ones. And when I was really little, it always kind of started with, I don't know if you remember Casper the Ghost.
Yes.
Casper, I guess, was bullied too and all of that. I didn't realize that until I was older. That's why he was my friend. But I used to have these dreams or these visions when I was hanging out with Casper. And I'll tell you one. When I was really little, I had a lot of these where they would reoccur over and over. And this was one of them. And this started when I was really little. So the first remembrance of this, Casper and I were, we were flying around going somewhere, and he wanted to take me somewhere. So I go to this place, and in front of me, there's a huge wall, but there's this wonderful gate that is clearly going into a garden, because you can see all these plants growing over the wall and all these beautiful flowers. There's this big gate in front of me, and I'm standing right in front of the gate. As I'm standing there, all of humanity is standing next to me. And in my head, I know that everybody's standing in this place, and they feel like all of humanity is standing next to them. But we're all, for some reason, in this place. So I'm standing there, and God walks out of this gate. And when I'm standing there as a kid, it was like everybody around me freaked out. Some dropped down on their knees. People are losing their minds. And I'm just standing there, and I'm looking at God, and I'm smiling. And some people are literally afraid. And he goes, why aren't you afraid? And I said, am I supposed to be afraid? And he laughed, and I laughed. And we ended up walking into this garden. And I can't even describe this to you, but it's like, if you're walking into God's garden, it's like everywhere you turn is like the perfect lit scene of beauty. I mean, it was like you could get lost just everywhere you looked. It was like, oh, wow, this flower is lit in a certain way, and there's a hummingbird, and then you turn this way, it's like, oh, the whole nother beautiful, unbelievable scene. So, but we're walking in, and he keeps leading me, and I go down to this bench, and we're having this conversation. And the conversation we have are always like, when I was little, it was things like, why is it so hard? Why are people, so mean to me, and all these bad things happening? Why are kids, aren't just healthy and happy? And, because I don't know, you don't know my whole story, but my sister also had health issues and surgery. She almost died a lot of times with kidneys and things and operations since she was like before 1 year old. She's had so many of them. And when you go to all these hospitals, for myself, my eyes and whatnot, my learning disabilities, you always meet these kids that have had the most horrible things imaginable happen to them. I mean, they're horribly burned, or they're just horribly deformed, or whatever it may be. And it's just like, so as a kid, I was around that all the time. And it was just like, why is all this horrible happening? And when God speaks, it's not like it's in words to some degree, though in that vision it was, but it's like he speaks in packets. It's like you could see a whole vision of stuff at the same time. And it's so deep and so riddled.
You got to be receptive to it, though.
Yeah.
And be
but
aware.
It was like,
and that's
yeah.
tough. That's tough for many people to see God working through others to help them too.
Well, I think in our perspective, in our world, God has been related to religion. We have to separate that. Okay, religions in our world are all human constructs, and they're all flawed and twisted. Okay, one of our biggest challenges as human beings is to see the wrongness and untwist the twisted. Make the wrong right, and we can't do that. A lot of times people feel like they're being faithful. Oh, I'm giving up my wants and desires. I'm following this faith. The book says this, so therefore I'm just going to give up my morality and just follow what this book says, what this guy said. And they really believe in their heart like they're doing good. But that's the problem. It's like most people think that they're doing good, or the greatest evils on this planet have been done by people who think they're doing good, right? There's nobody on the planet, even like the Third Reich or whatever, they're not going around like, we've embraced Satan and we're horrible humans and we're doing evil in the world. No, that's not what they're saying at all, right? They're always like, no, we're going to help people, we're going to save the world, we're going to fix all this badness, even if they're doing evil, right? So that's like their human challenge, is to go, okay, is this truly good, or are we just rationalizing this and making this good? The sickness of superiority. That's where I'm saying these 10 laws: equality, treating others as you want to be treated, respecting life, the laws of purpose, and the God laws. There's 5 God laws in there. It's not just for believers, it's for everybody to realize these fundamental basics. And the fundamental basics of God is that God is the creator of heaven and earth, and of all of us and everything, and good and evil. God is the God that I know and I represent is the creator of everything and all of us. So it's not like God is of the Christian religion and that's it. That's not even close to being the truth. We created the Christian religion after Christ died, and some guys in 200 BC or AC after his death kind of canonized the different writings and kind of made a church, and it kind of grew out from there. But then we look at like when Rome fell and the leaders of Rome became Christians, and how that affected, now it's the Roman Catholic Church, right? After Rome took over, and some of the pedophilia that we see in the church, and this idea of like the emperor, popes, the ruling over all of Europe, and dictators and all that kind of thing, kind of stems out of this wholesale idea that because I'm holy, I'm right. And that's where I think we fail, because we as humans can always become corrupted. And I always say that the higher power you have, the more corrupt you can become, or whatever that is. The idea of getting a rich man into heaven is harder than passing a camel through an eye of a needle, or all these kind of ideas. They're there because we as human beings can get lost. This idea that actually the very first chapter in the book talks the difference, like what is the true goal of life, the difference between success and true success, right? Human beings, we get caught up on these ideas of wealth, power, and fame, and sometimes beauty, and even being holiness or even intelligence as being like the ultimate, right? But usually power, wealth, and fame. And if you study the lives of all the wealthy and the powerful and the famous, it's not like those people are always the best people, right? They don't always know then what to do. They don't have, their health isn't automatically fixed. So just because you're wealthy, just because you're famous, just because you're intelligent or beautiful or whatever doesn't mean that all the rest of your life is in order. So you still have to go through the same trials and tribulations that the rest of us do. The problem is now you can affect greater change in the world, or you have power over people. And if you don't have the shared value system with the rest of us, if you are looking down at us, if you're using us as a means to an end and see everything as zero sum and you don't see like half the world and the majority of the world as human beings at all, and only you and your people as the ones that are rightfully leaders, this is the problem, right? So for me, all of our faiths, all of our collective understandings of political, government, it's all based in this sense of order, this sense of humanity creating something better so we can become better people. Look, nobody wants to have to rebel, right? We don't want to have to go out in the streets and like march and please treat me as equal. I mean, this whole idea, like last summer, it was like in America, we're fighting for Black people's right now, it's Asian people. What's next summer? Now it's going to be Latinos. Then it's, we're going to be at this forever. Then it's the half Latino, half Black people. Then it's the quarter Italian, half Asian. My God, it'll never end. Either we're all equal.
People do that though because they're trying to avoid their own troubles or their own tribulations and the fact that they hate their lives. So it's easier to jump onto a bandwagon of hating or spreading hate or focusing on other things than focusing on themselves. And it's going to continue on throughout. It's going to continue on throughout time. Yeah. But listeners, this is the end of a 2-part series with Andrew. We look forward to you showing up and listening or watching to part 2 of this amazing conversation that Andrew and I have been having in regards to, I'm going to end it with the human condition. So I look forward to seeing you or hearing you on the next episode, and God bless, and God bless. Never forget to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.